to me afterwards, let me see what the concept was, and then I can get feedback. So what I'm asking the team to do going forward is, and this is industry development, right? This is my take on industry development. It's not enough to say, we've rejected your idea. We must say why.
Yes.
We must indicate what was wrong. Is it the budget? Is it the story? Is it the timing? Timing not for your story, but timing for our schedule. Those kind of things. So that you don't go away with, and again, I'm coming back to the relationship, right? When you, the jilted lover, and you don't know what, then what? Right? Now, in the work context, it's the same, but also different, right? Because this is your bread and butter. And if you don't know what to fix, how do you get your bread and butter? So we are working on that. So going forward, rejection letters are going to be a lot more detailed, right? So you don't have to sit and wonder what happened here. But that's what I want to just see, and I'll try and get some feedback for you. And then can you spend time with the SABC producers? Yes, I tried to do this, right? So I ran a program once. I worked for Siemens. I ran a media practice in Africa, and I developed broadcast engineers. I found it very hard to place them because people feel, you're going to steal my IP, you're going to learn what I'm doing. So eventually what I did is I gave them to broadcasters at no cost. I said, here's an engineer, they need practical experience. I've trained them, I've developed them, they've got their qualification, but they need practical experience. And even when I gave them to broadcasters, I struggled, right? So it's a very competitive landscape. But I hear you, and we're trying to find ways around that. How do we get, which is why I said I want to speak to the legends. How do we take that experience and pass it on to up-and-coming film producers and that? So there's some ideas and thoughts we have around that, but I don't know if we'll be able to get it directly where you can go and sit with a producer and learn from them. But it's something that I've challenged the team to work on from an industry development perspective. What room do you have for content in sci-fi and fantasy? I can't tell you unless you propose the idea, right? So the idea is what is being assessed. So it could be any genre, submit it and let's see how it proceeds. I don't think, I'm looking at the two channel heads, we're not averse to the idea. S1 wants it, so there's direct answer. S1 wants it. We're not averse to any genre that you submit, right? And just note, when we do go out and we ask for content, it's because we've seen gaps based on assessments we've done. It doesn't mean that's all we're looking for. How does costing affect budget? Costs. Casting. Sorry, I missed it. Okay, how does casting affect budgets? I think I'm going to answer the question by not answering the question. So you decide on your cast, right? So what we are looking for, and I'm trying to rectify the CPM, the cost per minute. So that shouldn't be a factor. Today, if I go with somebody who's done 5 movies or films or whatever the case may be, and they recognize, then obviously their costs are higher. So you want that person, but you can't afford that person. So if I adjust or I've rectified the CPM, then you have creative flexibility there and decide on who needs to fit in that, right? The casting I will direct to people like Yashika. Nirvana's left the room now, I don't see her. The people who are managing that directly, right? I believe that you should be equally working with established actors and bringing new actors in as well, right? So when you watch all of these programs on Netflix, a lot of the time they're not known actors, right? And you watch the content, it doesn't mean it's weaker or poorer in any way. I want to move away from Hollywood, right? Hollywood has their blockbusters and their A-listers, and then if you don't make it there, you can't do anything else. That's not what we do, right? So it should be inclusive, it should be uncovering talent as we proceed. To the question on intervening on budget to prevent exploitation and that kind of stuff, we do have benchmarks. We don't advertise these benchmarks because So the challenge I have is, as a Schedule 2 company, I've got to go out and say everything that I'm doing. Now, before I respond to that, my competitor picks up my idea, goes to the producer, approaches them, delivers the concept, and then I've lost an idea. Now, imagine if I put my benchmark out there, immediately they know what they should be paying. And then it doesn't create competition. But when we do see things out of kilter, we do address it with the producers and say, look, that's not in keeping. We don't benchmark from a regional perspective per se, but we know that if you're going to go off-site, then it's going to be more expensive than if you are at a studio or location, for obvious reasons. But we do address that with the producers to make sure that there's a... Yeah, you have to add?
Thank you.
Okay, so that gets done in budget evaluation. So that's when we get the budget, we look at the different rates, and then we communicate with the producer to find out why are the rates like this, and we actually negotiate with them to put it up, put it low, whatever the rate is. So a lot of the producers that I've engaged with can bear witness to that in some instances we actually put it up because we noticed it was too low. So that's what gets done.
To the lady on the top, I also hope that I have the power. It's Merlin. I haven't cast a spell in a while, but let's see. So, I'm here for development, right? I didn't come to the SABC to prove anything. I've been in the industry for 27 years. I've launched pay TV platforms, I've terminated them. I've launched mobile platforms, I've launched OTT platforms. I came to the SABC to make a difference. You know that adage that says, you know, if you can't do it, then go and coach. Yeah, I forget the exact words. So I came to the SABC because I want to make a difference. I want to develop the industry. So this is me personally. The programs that I'm implementing are all within the policy of the SABC. But I've also worked in broadcasting for a long time. So the show must go on. Any policy that I put in place is not here for me until I leave. It's got to be here for the long period. So I'm working hard to make sure that the policies are sustainable long after I've left the SABC. So there's a lot of priority to make sure that these policies and programs are sustainable and can continue. So sometimes they go out faster, and other times they go out a little bit slower. But we are definitely here to develop the industry. Then the question around proposals shouldn't be weighed against each other. So we don't do that. We don't look at one concept and then say, oh, but that's better than that one. We score each one individually, and then we look at the score at the end, and which one scored the highest is the one that ultimately goes through. So from that perspective, we make sure that it is fair. But you raised something about the tiers that I want to talk to a little bit, right? So it's just a concept at this stage. But if you're a tier 1 production, that's all you're going to do. Sorry, you're not going to go to tier 2. Chances are you're only going to get one production from the SABC per year. Why do I say that? So the bigger production companies may feel slighted and offended, but unfortunately, if you're producing at 100 million rand a year, 260 episodes, where do you have time to do other stuff? Right? And this is part of spreading the money across. I can't be locked in with 3 or 4 producers or 3 productions with one producer, right? But there's a process to get there. So I can't take it off immediately and then lose all of my productions that are generating revenue. So it's a process of migration that we're looking for. So the tiered approach is something that we are bringing into the fold, more from a development perspective, but ultimately what will happen is if you are at a tier 1 company or tier 1 production, that's where you should be producing going forward. So each time you produce with us, and remember, it's not me benchmarking, it's the audience, it's the South African public benchmarking. So if your production slips in terms of rankings, ratings, that kind of stuff, then you go back down the tier. Then it's interventions that we've got to work on to bring you back up. Because what we should be doing as a broadcaster is we should be developing you up the ladder, not down the ladder, right? So we should be working with you to bring you to a tier 1 production, And then that's where you should be staying. You should be delivering that kind of thing on a regular basis. So we know that if we go to producer X, Y, and Z, we are guaranteed a level of success that's there. Now, it's easier said than done, and I'm oversimplifying it, right? There's a lot of pitfalls and that kind of stuff, but we're working with the teams to make sure that what we implement is sustainable and that we can work with everybody in the industry. That's why we're starting at the bottom end, right? So we start with development, and then we realize that as we develop them, we must develop them up. So how do they get to the next level, and the next level, and the next level? So that's the focus that we've got. I agree with you 100% on the authentic stories. How many of you watched The Black Door? That's good. Because that's where the audience went, right? Because ETV said sex, drugs, and brothels. That's what their campaign was. The SABC is held to a higher editorial standard. We've got to promote values to a nation. So when we deliver our content, we also assess that. So it doesn't mean we're not risque. We will be risque, but it must be contextualized, right? It's not about selling sex and drugs. There must be a context to it. So if you watch some of our programs at later nights, later in the evening, you'll see we do sort of push the envelope. So if you watched, and it's not produced locally, but you know, as we develop and unfold, we'll start to do that. So if you watch S3, we did the You, Me, Her story about the polyamorous marriage. We did Enslaved, Samuel L. Jackson's story about slavery. So we're not going to shy away from concepts, but it must be tastefully done. It's not about seeing naked people on TV, and it's not about gratuitous violence kind of stuff on TV. We're still a public broadcaster, but we realize that there's concepts that need to be pushed and discussions that need to be had, and that's where we want to go. I think I've answered all.